Have you ever walked into a grocery store and seen empty shelves? Not during Thanksgiving, not in the middle of a snowstorm. Just on an ordinary day. So what exactly is going on? As of August this year, egg prices have jumped more than 40%. Beef has hit record highs because of drought and supply shortages. Some states have even paused their free-range farming laws simply because there's not enough product to sell. And while this is happening, warnings from agricultural experts are getting louder the worst could hit in September. This video will reveal the truth about a food crisis quietly unfolding in America, where skyrocketing prices are not just about inflation, but also the result of supply chain disruptions and tariff policies. If you still believe grocery stores will always be fully stocked, it may be time to think again. Let's uncover 10 foods you should start stocking up on right now if you truly want to protect your family from shortages and shocking price spikes this September. Number 1. Rice and grains. Do you remember the last time you bought a 10-pound bag of white rice for under $10? If you do, then you lived through a time when everything still felt within reach. But that time is slipping away, not because you changed, but because the world itself has shifted. Rice, once a simple and cheap staple, has now become a flashpoint in the global supply chain crisis. Why? Because India, the largest rice exporter in the world, just slapped a 20% export tax on many popular varieties, while the US has piled on a 50% tariff on rice imported from the country. The result, basmati bags that used to cost $25 are now pushing close to $40 if you can even find them. The problem is not just the price. Some major distributors on the East Coast have started limiting rice orders for restaurants because incoming shipments cannot keep up with demand. And you already know what that means if restaurants are being squeezed. How much more fragile is the supply for everyday consumers? Grains are not doing much better. Canada, the main supplier of oats and wheat to the US, just went through a rough planting season drought in the early months, heavy rains in the later ones. The outcome, delayed harvests and processing plants running at half speed. Some oat-based products like granola and oat milk are already becoming harder to find, and when demand outpaces supply, you know what comes next. Wholesale oat prices have climbed more than 18% since spring. If you rely on quick breakfasts or love homemade baking, this surge is going to hit your wallet. And the bigger issue is this: when oats run short, you are not just losing oatmeal, you are also losing granola protein bars and even alternative milks. So what should you do right now? Stock up smartly. White rice can last up to 30 years if stored in airtight packaging in a cool, dry, dark place. Pro tip: slip a few bay leaves into the bag, an old school trick that really does keep bugs away. Rolled oats or steel-cut oats, if sealed tightly in glass jars and kept moisture-free, can stay good for up to 2 years. Do not wait until November to watch a $25 bag of rice turn into $40 and regret not preparing sooner. Rice and grains may look humble, but they are the soft gold of the stormy price season ahead. Number 2, cooking oil. Go ahead, open your kitchen cabinet and take a look at that bottle of cooking oil. Do you notice anything special about it? No, because it is too familiar. It just sits there quietly, never demanding attention. Until one day you look at your grocery receipt and realize it costs $3 more than it did last month. This is no surprise. Cooking oil, whether it is soybean, sunflower, or olive, is quietly becoming a strategic item in American kitchens. While most people are busy tracking the price of meat or eggs, that little bottle has been creeping up week after week, almost unnoticed. By the time you realize it, it is already too late. Why is this happening? Part of the reason is that major oil-producing countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Ukraine are facing serious climate and trade challenges. Exports are restricted, shipping is disrupted, droughts and floods show up right on cue during harvest season. But here's the bigger issue. Did you know the US is using more and more vegetable oil to make biodiesel? That is right. Instead of going into your frying pan, a growing share of soybean and canola oil is being diverted into fuel. The result: that bottle in your hand is not just competing on the grocery shelf, it is also competing with the energy sector. So prices rise, supplies tighten. And when those two collide, what happens? People on fixed budgets like seniors or working class families are the first to feel pushed out of the kitchen aisle. They cannot keep paying higher prices month after month. They cut back. They scramble to adjust. And here is what makes cooking oil different. It is hard to replace. Without oil, fried foods are no longer fried. Stir fries lose their flavor. Even baked goods need oil or fat to stay soft and moist. So, if today you can still buy a bottle of cooking oil at a reasonable price, do not wait. Do not put it off until the moment you desperately need it. Think of it as kitchen insurance. Quiet, unassuming, but ready to save you when the time comes. Number 3, eggs. Do you remember the first time you saw eggs with a purchase limit sign? No one announced it out loud. Just a quiet reminder that said, there is not enough for everyone. Then one day you start asking yourself, why are egg prices climbing so fast? In January 2025, the average price in the US hit $4.95 per dozen, nearly double from the year before, and the highest ever recorded. Things got worse in the summer when prices did dip, but were still 54% higher compared to the same time last year, according to the USDA. What is behind this? The avian flu outbreak, HPAI, has not let up. Since the start of the year, more than 36 million laying hens have been euthanized to stop the spread-cutting egg production down by 5.5% compared to last year, which means you are not only paying more, but sometimes you might not even find what you are looking for. It does not stop there. Restaurants like Waffle House, which go through millions of eggs a year, have had to add 50 cents to every egg they serve just to cover higher costs. So what about families cooking breakfast at home? A plate of scrambled or fried eggs today could cost twice as much as it did a few months ago, and no one gave you a warning. Retirees living on fixed incomes feel this more than anyone. They remember when a dozen eggs cost only $2 or $3. Now, eggs have become a tough choice. Meanwhile, working families are forced to think about longer-term options. Should we buy fresh eggs today, or switch to powdered or frozen eggs to keep costs under control? And the story is not over yet. The USDA has a $1 billion plan to control the outbreak, improve farm efficiency, and even import eggs to cool off the market. But it could take 3 to 6 months before any impact is felt. In other words, you can wait, but you will be waiting a while. So when you see eggs still on the shelf at a price you can handle, think carefully. Not because of panic, but because you are securing your family's kitchen. A carton today could be the difference between a normal breakfast next week and no eggs at all. Do not wait until the shelves are wiped clean to regret it. Acting today is how you protect tomorrow's meals. Number 4, beef. If you're planning your next meal around beef, you might want to think again. Prices have already climbed to the point where your wallet feels it. But the deeper issue is that supply is shrinking at an alarming rate. Every steak on the grill is no longer just a tasty choice. It is becoming a financial decision, and not an easy one. The reality is hard to deny. In July 2025, beef prices were up 11.3% compared to the same month last year, far outpacing the overall rise in food prices. A quick look at the meat counter tells the story. Ground beef now costs as much as pork belly, and a single steak rivals the bill for a whole bag of vegetables. But the scarier part is what's happening behind the scenes. Supply is drying up. For generations, the cattle herd has been the backbone of America's meat industry. Yet USDA numbers from the first half of 2025 show just 28.7 million beef cows, still the lowest level in decades. Not only are numbers critically low, but many ranchers are holding back heifers to rebuild their herds, which means fewer cattle going to market and an even tighter supply ahead. And here's the truth: even if you are not stockpiling beef, even if you just shop weekly at the grocery store, you are already feeling the squeeze. Retirees see higher beef prices cutting protein from their plates. Middle-class families watch what used to be a filling dinner shrink because the cost per pound has spiked. And for the prepper-like crowd, this is a red flag. Once the market is disrupted, beef is one of the hardest things to replace, and prices rarely come back down quickly. Worse still, the road to recovery is long. Ranchers in Nebraska and Texas have started holding back heifers and investing in herd rebuilding, but it takes at least 2 years, often longer, before calves grow big enough for slaughter. On another front, imports from Mexico have slowed over disease concerns, while Brazil faces a 50% tariff, making it difficult to bring in additional supply. This is not casual advice, it is a warning bell. If today you can still buy beef at a price you can manage, do not wait until you simply cannot afford it. A few pounds in the freezer could be what keeps family dinners balanced and nutritious, even as beef climbs to new heights. Do not hesitate. Because once beef turns into a luxury item, a hearty meal could truly become a luxury in your own kitchen. Number 5, corn and corn products. If you have always thought of corn as a simple everyday food, cheap, easy to find, and always available, this is the moment to think again. Not because corn is disappearing, but because the corn market is shifting in ways no one can predict. This year, the US is seeing an exceptionally large corn harvest. Production is expected to hit record highs, which sounds like good news. But in the market, nothing is more unsettling than abundance that still brings worry. Corn prices have dropped sharply since the start of the year, leaving many farmers with losses. And when farmers cannot make a profit, what happens? They pull back. They leave fields idle. They switch to other crops. That may not create a shortage immediately, but it sets the stage for a crisis next year. Corn is not just food. It is the backbone of hundreds of products: cornmeal, corn syrup, livestock feed, popcorn, corn flakes, and ethanol, the biofuel heavily promoted in the US. When policy pushes more corn into ethanol production, millions of tons are diverted from food to fuel. And who gets squeezed out of the game? Consumers, especially retirees and fixed-income households, the very groups that have long relied on corn as a lifesaver for affordable meals. And do not forget this: in regions like the Midwest, weather has been erratic this year. Too much rain delayed harvests, leaving corn at risk of spoiling before it even makes it to storage. And America has had a storage infrastructure problem for decades. So when production is high but storage is poor, millions of tons can still go to waste, which means consumers may never feel the plenty that government reports suggest. For those preparing early, the prepper-like crowd, corn is one of the essentials worth stocking. Cornmeal stores well. Dried corn keeps for years. And when markets get chaotic, corn's versatility can be the thing that helps you stay in control of your kitchen. The bottom line: corn is not scarce this year, but next year it could be a different story. And when demand overtakes supply, not from you, but from the energy sector and exports, prices will soar. That bag of popcorn you once bought for a snack could suddenly feel like a luxury item. If you see corn at a good price today, act on it. Do not wait until every shelf is empty to regret not buying sooner. Number 6, beans. Keep an eye on those bags of black beans, red beans or green beans, sitting quietly on the shelf, because they could be among the first and most important items to disappear once the market starts wobbling. Over the past year, consumers in the US and Canada have reported that per capita consumption of dried beans jumped about 30%, not because of shortages, but because many families shifted to cheaper plant-based protein as meat and other products kept climbing in price. The surge in demand has not been matched with increased production, which means wholesalers are already feeling the pressure of tight inventories. When demand overtakes supply, that is when you risk losing your chance to buy beans. Picture this: every time you go shopping, beans are no longer stacked high on the shelf, or maybe only a few bags are left at a higher price. How would that make you feel? A little uneasy, then frustrated, and finally powerless if the bag you need simply vanishes because alternatives are not as cheap or flexible as they once were. Who feels this the most? Retirees, people living off savings or pensions. They remember when a bag of beans cost just a few dollars, enough to feed the whole family. When prices rise or shelves go bare, suddenly the dinner table loses its steady source of protein and fiber, leaving meals feeling incomplete. For working families with tight budgets, beans have always been that no-brainer food. But when beans suddenly become something you have to ration, it means the cheapest option is no longer within easy reach. And there is more. Certain beans, like red kidney beans or black turtle beans, are under heavy export pressure from international markets, especially from regions like Argentina, where crops were damaged. Importers are cutting back on orders, which means some of the supply that would have stayed local is being redirected overseas. When the domestic market starts scrambling for substitutes, relying more on beans grown at home, that is a clear sign a core food resource is at risk. For the prepper-like crowd, beans are a lifesaver. Easy to store, long shelf life, and versatile for almost any recipe. A single bag today could carry you through even if the supermarket turns chaotic. Here's the hard truth: when things begin to slip out of control, the items you stock early, like beans, are the very things that will keep your meals intact. Do not wait until there is nothing left to cook before realizing what you missed. If beans are still cheap and plentiful today, this is your chance to get ahead. Do not wait for the market to swing and suddenly discover that what once felt ordinary has turned into a luxury. Number 7, essential spices. If you think spices like salt, pepper, cinnamon, or vanilla will never run out, think again. When things shift quickly, it is often the simple flavors that get overlooked, and their absence can make an entire meal feel lifeless. Most prized spices, such as black pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and vanilla, cannot be grown in large quantities locally. They come from places like India, Indonesia, or Madagascar. And when import tariffs can climb as high as 50%, prices shoot up while supply chains twist. That is not just a market issue. It is the real fear of losing the soul of your meals when a pinch of spice is no longer enough to make candy cakes or sauces taste the way they used to. Picture this: on a normal day, you make soup or bake something for breakfast. You reach for the pepper shaker, give it a shake, and it just does not smell the same anymore. You would sigh, right? That feeling is not just, "Oh, I miss that jar." It is a quiet disappointment that lingers. Who notices this? Most home cooks people who love to control what goes into their food. And for older folks, a little cinnamon or sugar is enough to warm the body. When those small comforts disappear, it is not a small loss. The tension rises further when food companies faced with unstable spice supplies shift toward artificial flavoring because it is cheaper. Sure, your cooking might still have flavor, but it is not real anymore. What you call spices may already have lost their true taste. For the prepper-light mindset, this is a silent warning. There's no guarantee that salt or cinnamon will still be on discount shelves this fall. The familiar taste of your meals may be easy to dismiss, but it is also what keeps both body and mind feeling safe and satisfied. So remember, while the spice market may seem fine right now, the months ahead still carry the weight of tariff pressures that could thin out supermarket shelves. That's when you will notice your kitchen's flavor set missing a few key notes, and you will long for that fragrant jar of pepper or that warm box of cinnamon. If spices are still reasonably priced and fully stocked today, now is the time to act. Do not wait until everything tastes bland. Number 8. Canned foods. Have you ever opened your pantry only to find just 1 or 2 old cans of soup or tuna left? In that moment, you feel both uneasy and helpless, because we usually assume canned food is the most reliable thing in the house. But that's when you realize something important: the system is starting to no longer make space for things we once thought were a given. Canned foods used to be the silent hero in every situation. Power outages, storms, or simply a day when you were too tired to cook. The worrying part now is that some canned items are being paused in production, while the ones that remain on shelves are quietly climbing in price. Maybe you haven't noticed, and because it's so obvious, it's also easy to overlook, until the shelves are completely bare. Have you noticed how some business models are shifting toward fresh and refrigerated items instead of canned? Decisions like that directly affect the supply of preserved foods. And once profit-driven factories cut back on canned production, consumers, like us, are the ones left paying the price. A packet of instant noodles won't fill you up the way a can of fish, vegetables, or soup does. Daily life is pushing us into situations where we need to think carefully. If you're living on a fixed income, canned goods are the cheapest and safest way to stock up. And for the person responsible for putting dinner on the table, not having a can of chicken or sausage in the pantry makes it much harder to plan meals for the week. There's another factor that makes canned goods more fragile. Raw materials are tighter than before. When the costs of oil, tin plate, or aluminum cans rise, manufacturers quickly respond with smaller, pricier versions. And you suddenly realize you've been pushed into a world where convenience now comes at a higher cost. Think about it. Pensions aren't going up, fresh produce keeps getting more expensive. And cutting back canned foods means you're losing the ability to keep a warm, easy meal on hand. Or maybe you're someone who likes to be self-reliant and prepared, but with no cans of bean soup or fish, when a storm hits your kitchen, no longer feels as safe as it once did. And here's one more small but serious detail: canned food production can get disrupted by food safety inspections or factory labor shortages. When the assembly line stops, store shelves gradually thin out until there's nothing left to stock. Do you really want yourself or your family stuck in that can't cook anything because nothing's left situation? So if today your pantry still looks full of canned goods, take note and hold on to some. Not out of fear, but because someday when everything else feels uncertain, your kitchen will still have something reliable for a meal. Number 9, essential spices. Every kitchen has a little corner for spices. We all assume the salt, the pepper, the turmeric, the cardamom, or that jar of oregano will always be there. But strangely enough, the very things we think of as never running out are the ones most vulnerable when the world gets shaky. Few people realize just how fragile the global spice market really is. One drought in India, an export ban from Sri Lanka, or a quarantine order in Africa, and the entire supply chain for cinnamon, pepper star, anise, cloves, and more can slow down for months, even a year. Suddenly, a jar of whole peppercorns or a bag of dried leaves in the supermarket becomes something you can't get at the old price anymore. Here's the ironic part: no one dares to hike spice prices too aggressively. Instead, retailers quietly shrink the packages. That 100-gram jar of spice, now it's 70 grams, same price. Did you notice? Probably not. But when you add it all up, the amount you've lost isn't small. Another hidden factor is transportation costs. Most spices travel a long way, by ship through ports, then on domestic trucks. And every step is now weighed down by fuel costs, insurance, and delays caused by trade disruptions. Sometimes a bag of turmeric or ginger powder sits at a port for weeks, just waiting for enough containers to move. Home cooks, the heartbeat of every kitchen. Feel this shift immediately. When you have to drop a favorite dish just because you're missing a pinch of dill powder or a few slices of dried star anise, it's not just flavor you've lost. It's a rhythm of life being interrupted. For seniors who are used to living frugally, this shows up in another way. Traditional spices don't just make meals tastier, they carry comfort and familiarity. When the stew no longer has that touch of cinnamon, or the soup lacks its peppery warmth, it feels like a quiet but deep loss. And for those who like to be prepared, spices have always been a priority. Long shelf life, easy to store, essential for both body and spirit. But when these items stop being affordable and accessible, that sense of preparation starts to feel incomplete. So if lately you found yourself just throwing in whatever because you're missing spices, it's not your fault. It's a sign that the global supply chain is shifting, and the first place it shows up is in the kitchen of every household. Number 10, milk and dairy products. Have you ever wondered why milk prices keep bouncing around even when reports say production is ticking up? That's not a contradiction. It's a sign of a system facing quiet but serious strains. Yes, nationwide milk output has grown slightly, but the increase is tiny compared to the pace of demand. Especially for products like condensed milk, skim yogurts, or specialty cheeses. At the same time, the benchmark all-milk price is still running higher than it was a year ago, which means consumers are paying both in volume and quality, sometimes even more money for less product. And here's something most people don't notice. Dairy processors are prioritizing higher value items like butter whey or powdered milk. When fresh milk gets diverted as an input for those products, the carton you're looking for on a grocery shelf suddenly isn't the top priority anymore. That's why you might only see the 1-gallon jug left at a price that feels steeper and a volume that doesn't stretch as far. The pressure doesn't stop there. Policy changes, disease outbreaks, and labor costs all pile on. During peak summer, most farms are already running near capacity. Then the HPAI bird flu hit some key dairy states. Any farm with detections has to isolate, which cuts supply to processors. With less fresh milk flowing in, more gets funneled toward industrial channels, leaving retail shelves to scramble with what's left. A thinner, less predictable supply. Seniors who shop in bulk, relying on milk or powdered milk for their daily breakfast, will feel that disruption most directly. A higher price tag, or losing access to the type they prefer, can turn a routine morning into something less steady and less comforting. For families with young kids, a sudden shortage can feel even more dramatic. Breakfast and snacks aren't the same without milk. For those who prepare ahead, powdered milk has been one of the easiest ways to stretch supply. But if that category gets reprioritized toward industry, it too can turn into a hot item instead of a guaranteed staple. The reality is this: even with a slight bump in production, a mix of structural shifts, policy changes, disease, and costs has pushed dairy into a cycle of higher prices and tighter supply. And if you don't keep a little extra on hand, you could end up with a cart full of hope, but nothing you actually need by the evening. If yesterday you still had a carton of milk or a pouch of powdered milk in the fridge, remember that. In the near future, breakfast security won't just mean having enough. It will mean having a little extra to keep your meals intact, both in taste and in peace of mind. We can't control global shocks, from tariffs and supply chain breakdowns to weather or disease. But we can prepare. The simple staples like rice, eggs, meat, spices, or milk are the real anchors that keep life steady when everything else feels uncertain.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.